Well, it's 1:30, so I think we'll just kick off straight on time. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Ford. I am joined today by Nick, and welcome to the Australian Organic Market Report 2021, Organic Consumer Demand and Preferences. So the 2021 market report was launched in June, and today we thought it'd be very interesting for people to have a deeper dive into Chapter 2, which is all about consumers and their purchasing behaviour in relation to organic over the 12-month period of last year. So first up, I'd just like to introduce Nick Bez. He's the director of Mobium Group, who is our key research partner for consumer insights. We've worked with Mobium Group for over a decade, and Nick is very well experienced with more than 20 years in the FMCG and consumer insights space. He has a whole host of accolades there in regards to his qualifications. So he comes very well equipped from a research perspective to assist Australian Organic with their market research requirements. And my name is Nikki Ford. As I mentioned before, I'm the CEO of Australian Organic. I've had about a bit over 15 years experience in the fast moving consumer good industry, both in food and beverage, and in most recent years in the organic industry. So Australian Organic, for those who are online that don't know, is the leading national peak body for organics. We advocate on behalf of our members, of which we have about 1,700, and more broadly, the organic sector. Australian Organic is a not-for-profit organisation owned by its members, and we work with government and industry on a daily basis to progress the interests of the organic industry, both here in Australia and overseas. You probably most notably know us for our logo, which is on the screen to the right, the bud. We are the most recognised logo in the industry, and Nick will go into some of those insights a little bit later. But the bud will celebrate its 35th birthday next year. And for us, we've had a long-standing history in the organic industry, primarily in certification to begin with, but in the last 3 years in advocacy. So the market report is produced on a biannual basis, and this year's report we worked closely with a number of different industry stakeholders, University of Melbourne and Nielsen IQ, who's recently been rebranded. They were just simply Nielsen. Mobium, as I mentioned, we've been working with for over a decade, and Euromonitor International, to name the most of our research. So today, Nick is going to take you through the consumer insights in relation to what organic consumers have been doing for the 12 months of last year. Over to Nick.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for jumping on board. Today, I'd just like to share with you some of the highlights from the consumer chapter in the market report. If you haven't got a full copy, I suggest through AO you avail yourself of that. Besides the consumer insights, there's a whole range of other really useful and important industry information. And today, in particular, I want to talk about the consumer work that's been done. So what you'll see in this report is a really, I guess, detailed look at how Australian consumers are reacting to organics, what that means from a purchasing point of view, but in particular, I'd like to highlight some of the key elements about what's driving consumer interest and therefore uptake and demand, some of the barriers, and to look at, I guess, some of the opportunities that may exist moving forward. So here are some of the highlights. Again, the report's the key reference to go into that, but I'd like to touch on some of that. Just by way of background, Mobium's been involved in the consumer work around the organic industry for firstly BFA, which then became AO, since 2009. And over the course of that time, specifically for AO, we've spoken to over 11,000 Australian consumers about what it is that drives them to make an organic purchase or not, what it means to them, and how they're acting in terms of their future intentions. So I've also got a professional, I guess, interest in organics and the health and wellness industry. When I worked at Coles back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was involved in the project team that put the first inverted commas health food store within a store into Coles, which included the first systematic look at trying to build an organic offer. And so, it's really been, I guess, a 20+ year journey now for me, but also it's also symbolic, I guess, of how the industry has changed and grown as well. So firstly, last year was a very challenging year for the global community as well as the Australian community with the COVID pandemic. This research that we're going to talk about was fielded in February this year, so a relatively recent snapshot, but it asked people to reflect on their prior 12 months, so front and center in the pandemic. So one of the key things that was found was the resilience of the industry and the number of people who were participating, but in particular the fact that even though there were some financial pressures on some, overall there was a net increase amongst organic purchasers in terms of how much they were allocating to organics as part of their overall food spend. So you can see there that over a third had actually claimed to have increased their purchasing against 8 who decreased. So on balance, around 30% actually spent more on their organic purchasing, which within the context of COVID was a pleasing result and just shows the momentum and underlying strength of the industry. When it comes to how people are shopping, we saw some pretty large shifts in where people were purchasing from, their organics from, and in particular around this set of questions is around their frequency of purchase, not how much they spend in each outlet, but very clearly supermarkets continue to dominate the spend patterns of people. So around 2/3 of people say that they either frequently or often shop in a supermarket. You can also see that a number of the other channels declined during the year. COVID did have an impact on that, where a number of these formats were closed for some or all parts or large parts of the year. So the only two that actually grew were supermarkets and also online, which if we went back to 2009 has seen a significant jump from around 1 or 2% to now a quarter of organic purchase actually using that channel. Other channels saw some decline, so things like farmers markets, which obviously went offline for a long period of time, and some of the other specialty formats have also declined in the frequency of shop over the year. But the other thing that's clear here is that most organic purchasers do use a variety of different formats when they're seeking out organics. And we captured, besides the quantitative data, a whole range of different qualitative or open-ended responses. So we really do try to capture the mindset, the why of what's happening. So on the upside, and it's a general trend, not just for this year, but people getting greater awareness about the health benefits or the perceived health benefits that that organics can provide. So the whole notion of free from chemicals and other things that are inherent in the organic offer are one of the key drivers where people start to reallocate their shopping. And also, I guess from a COVID point of view, people changing their purchasing decisions as they were starting to cook more from home and various other components to the at-home shopping experience. On the downside, we saw certain formats, and as an example there, farmers market closed due to COVID, and other stores as well. So supermarkets were able, and clearly online, able to continue to trade without impediment, which helps explain some of those shifts. So one of the things to, I guess, bear in mind is the pandemic in one form or another is going to be with us for a little while. So whilst we need to be cautious about some of these shifts, I think it's certainly accelerated the online component, not just in organics, but across the board. So certainly from a retail point of view, thinking about the online offer that you might be offering is something that's super important, as it is for brands when they're considering how they're communicating with shoppers. They may not be able to get into stores, but they may well be looking for information to try and validate or check on their purchasing. So online is a key way to do that. One of the things we did this year, which has been done in the past, but we went at it a lot harder this year, was to try and build a segmentation model to really understand the nuances within the Australian consumer market when it came to buying organics. Looking at those who were purchasing and also looking at those who weren't. And one of the key things that we've learned over a number of years is that the people who buy organic or don't buy organic is very across society. So it's very difficult and wrong to try and stereotype a organic consumer to be rich, to be educated, to be living in a certain way. So what we wanted to do here was to go, okay, we understand some of that on a macro level. How do we use a segmentation model to understand more closely the types of organic consumers there are, and then to drill down beyond that and to look at what some of their specific barriers are and where the opportunities are. So the personas are the output of the segmentation model, and in the report you'll see a number of people. Personas are really just an embodiment of a type of consumer. So we've worked through a 5 cluster analysis here, where we can see 3 types of purchasers down the left-hand side and 2 types of non-purchasers. So I'd just like to delve into that a little bit more fully. So firstly, the organic buyers. And when we talk about segmentation, what we're looking for is characteristics within a sample where we can find those aspects which bind them together. So how are they the same? And then looking at other shoppers and trying to understand how they're different to others. And we build a series of segments or clusters around that. And in this case, we used a behavioural model where we asked people to self-assess across just a few dimensions about how they perceive the organic industry, or how they perceive organics, and then what they do about it, and in particular, how much they allocate of their household food spend. And so we came up with 3 different types of organic buyers, and you can see them there: the devoted, the committed, and the dabbling. And each of these have very different outlooks on the organic industry and how organics fits into their life, but all of them are very, very interested and receptive and actually doing something about purchasing. So the group with the highest levels of spending are what we call a devoted, and they set themselves apart because they're trying to include as much organic into their shopping repertoire as possible. So they're very consistent in what they buy. They've got a very wide range of repertoire in terms of different products that they buy. So they've got breadth of different product types. So from food through to non-food, and within food, a whole range of different categories. But they also buy very regularly. So there's more and more evidence that these people are trying to embrace organics as in all parts of their life. And these people also have a much wider outlook, I guess, in terms of how health and wellness fits into their overall life. So they're particularly interested in their own personal health and well-being, but also community and planetary health and well-being. And these people spend a significant portion of their food shopping budget on organics. And so the devoted, which works out at about 7% of all food shoppers, spend at least 50% or more of their household weekly budget on organics. As we move down to the committed, we see this larger group, 18% of all food shoppers, who buy organic regularly, but it's certainly not the majority of their purchasing. So they are buying other non-organics. They're looking for variety, and these people are still in adoption mode. So they might have a core set of categories that they buy often, but they're seeking out, to the extent they can, new categories and new brands. But they're certainly committed to organics as a core component of how they shop. And we see that they allocate between 20 and 40% of their household food budget. The largest group of organic buyers, and 31% of all food shoppers, are what we call a dabbling. So this group is a very large group, and they're really just starting their organic journey. They really like the idea of organic to some extent. Whilst it's newer for them, they are really embracive of what the benefits organic can deliver. But they're very sporadic in their buying. They may only buy one product or a couple of products, and they may only buy it when it's on special or infrequently, or if it's a specific item that they're interested in. And their levels of spending are relatively low, up to about 10% of their household food budget there. So the dabbling is a very large opportunity for the industry to activate in terms of giving them surety, giving them product, giving them information to help them make an informed decision, so that they will continue to upweight their purchasing. Because the fact is, a lot of these people may only be buying once or twice per year at the moment, and if we can get them buying twice as many, which would only be on 4 occasions, all of a sudden you start to see a very large incremental bump in the industry sales. So the long and the short of it is, there's around 80% of all food shoppers who are receptive to buying organics. The majority of organic buyers, much like the overall food market, is skewed female, and the metropolitan market is certainly more embracive than rural and regional areas. Having said all that, we see people from 18 through to 69 buying. We see different levels of education. We see different levels of income. So the appeal of organics is definitely democratized and continues to be so. So trying to target or stereotype them into rich, highly educated urban dwellers is not necessarily correct, and second of all, is missing a large opportunity in the total market. When it comes to non-buyers, which at present are around 44% of food shoppers, we see a couple of different groups, and the bigger group is what we call the curious. So whilst the individuals in this group haven't yet purchased an organic product, they are certainly receptive to doing so. So they're not closed-minded to what organics might be able to deliver, but for a whole host of reasons at the moment haven't started that journey. So price is a significant barrier for them, as is the perception of availability, and that's really about access. So can I buy it where I shop now? They've got concerns about the range of products that are available, and in particular that they're faced up with a whole raft of new brands that they've never purchased before, and they're somewhat uncertain about making that choice. And then the last bit is that whilst they understand there are some benefits, they are still unclear about how to validate those. So this group is also a prime candidate for the industry because they are receptive, but it's about how we communicate, how we deal with the barriers so that they begin their journey. And then the last component of the market of non-buyers is the cynical. And for a whole host of reasons, they are just not interested in organics. One of the key things we see is skepticism about the benefits of organics. They don't believe necessarily that an organic product is any better or has any attributes that are better than other products. They think to some extent that the industry, is a bit of a marketing ploy, or a whole host of other reasons why they dismiss what the proposition of organic is about. And in particular, in coupling, in most cases, is they just can't see a reason why they should allocate the premiums that exist to organics. So the key message here is that between the curious and the dabbling, those two groups, which represent close to 60% of Australian food shoppers, who are either only buying organics very occasionally or haven't started at all, one of the key engine rooms of future growth. As a brand, I think it's really important to think about how you communicate, in particular looking for simple messaging that allows them to make an informed choice, and we'll talk about some of those communication requirements momentarily. So when we talk about the organic market, we're starting to get a more nuanced view of who's buying and who's not, and for the industry and for brands, that also then starts to open up, I guess, questions about how we target, how we communicate, and how we can differentiate to tap into these different segments. When we ask people about how they see organics, and there's a range of questions around this, one of the key questions is about what are the benefits to you? You can see the top 5 there, which have been relatively consistent over a long period of time. And interestingly, this notion of free from is a key bundling, I guess, of the benefits of organics. So free from chemicals, free from additives, free from GMOs, within the top 3. So people can get their mind around, and clearly, most people clearly understand that not having chemicals or additives or GMOs provides some benefit to their own personal health and well-being. That's what people think, and that's one of the key drivers of action. The environmentally friendly piece has been, over the last probably 5 occurrences of the survey, been also very well known and understood, and is continuing in percentage terms to increase. So when we look at the benefits of organics, it's really a bundle of benefits, and it's about personal health and well-being, community health and well-being, and planetary health and well-being. And if we go back to 2016, you can see there that the top 3 have basically been pretty well entrenched, and you can see others that are moving up and down a little bit, but it's really the free from aspects which are driving the outcomes there. So cruelty free, free range. There's some animal welfare issues that are getting closer to the top as well, and I think that also fits into the wider trends around veganism and consumers being more concerned about animal welfare, as well as supply chain welfare as well. So also some aspects around local food sourcing, so knowing where my food comes from, et cetera, et cetera. So people do have a long list, but the top ones are pretty well entrenched. When it comes to barriers, price has been, since 2009, and remains the highest order issue. The value proposition of organics and the price premiums attached are seen by people to be a constraint to their ability to increase their purchase weight in organics. Having said that, if we went back to 2009, 10, 11, 12, they were sort of in the price value barrier was around the 80% mark, and consistently has been dropping slowly over the last number of years. A couple of things happening in the market there. Lower priced entry products have come in particular, supermarket private labels have helped drive the entry price point down significantly. And I think in a general sense, we've also seen more product become available, and hence competition start to come in. So price, whilst it is still the number one and by far the most significant impediment, is slowly winding its way back. Trust then is the second biggest barrier, and whilst it's continuing to decline, and again that's moved down from low 50s over the time series, it's still a significant issue. And I think the key aspect there is really about, because the price one is difficult, it's out of suppliers' control. Potentially the cost of goods, etc., are what they are, but how we build trust is something that the industry and brands can control, and it's a precursor, I guess, for a lot of people to go the next step and consider brands and categories which they haven't had experience in before. So You'll see the other barriers there. This being able to easy to identify that is organic sort of fits into the trust as well. Really interestingly, easier access and convenience of buying has dropped massively. Going back to the early days in 2010, 12, etc. People were looking for easier access, and I think now as availability has been democratized across more channels, that's really dropped away. And the other barriers also by and large have continued to fall, and are much lower level drivers of people having reluctance. So on the upside, we're seeing an increasing metric which is called out to the side, which is more and more people are saying they don't think that there are any benefits. They're ready to go with increased purchasing if their personal circumstances and the products that they're interested in allow that. So that's grown from low teens now to have I guess a really solid base of people who are saying no, organics. There's nothing right now that's holding me back. I'm buying either as much as I want, or if there's things that I see that I would like to consider, that I can. One of the things that is increasing is the general desire for clear information to make an informed choice. And over the last couple of iterations of the survey, we've looked at what kind of information people are looking for. And you'll see here that the number one thing that people are looking to when they look at shelf labels, and there's at product labels, which is a percentage that's super high now. So more and more people are doing that. Well over 3/4 are looking for that information. So ingredients is a primary, along with cert logos. So more and more people over time have been looking for that. Country of origin is becoming more important, and that feeds into some of the other work we've done, not just in organics, but other industries around the rise of Australian made, or at least a desire to understand where products and supply chains are coming from. And then nutritional panels. So really importantly, from a brand perspective and also a retailer perspective, to make sure that both from a product on packaging point of view, but also an on-shelf point of view, providing information that allows customers to make an informed choice. And again, back to the online thing, many shoppers potentially can't get into store anymore. So how you can provide that through your online stores, as well as brand websites, is super crucial, because the ability to pick up a can or a packet and read the ingredients, understand what certs it have, etc., is diminished certainly in the COVID world. So there's certainly opportunities to deal with that. One of the other things in terms of information that we've had a look at in this iteration of the survey was people's understanding of what it means to be organic, and then in that context, whether they've ever had any experience with dubious information where they felt misled. So one of the, I guess, things we're seeing is a lack of awareness about the fact that within the current standards and definitions in Australia, that there's not one defined legal definition of organic. Most people aren't aware of that. Likewise, a similar amount are not aware that there's a very low minimum threshold of ingredient, 2%, to allow a product to be called organic. When people understand that, the level of skepticism around organics becomes an issue. So there are really big impediments caused by the lack of mandatory standards at the moment. It causes confusion and it undermines confidence. When we go on and look at the notion of a dubious claim, so there was a question was around whether people had felt they'd been misled, or they'd gotten home and read more about it, or figured out that in fact the product they'd bought wasn't organic. or certainly wasn't what it claimed to be. Really big numbers there, 31%, had previously experienced that as an issue. And when we go into the hardcore groups, 44% of the devoted group and 45% of the committed. So the real engine rooms of this market have experienced issues over the journey about what that means. So there's definitely some red flags here in terms of how the industry progresses in regard to making sure that if we can get to a unified standard and we can move, I guess, past the ability for an unregulated definition, that that may well deal with some of the trust issues that exist. And on the flip side of that is, well, what can be done to help people have greater surety to make sure that what they are buying is legitimate and in fact organic. So in the general market sense, we've seen more and more people, and went flat between 2019 at about 60% of all shoppers saying that they know that there are organic trust marks out there, that certification programs exist and can be a source of increased trust. So 2 in 3 say that when they're introduced to the concept of a certification mark, believe that yes, it can have an improvement in their levels of trust. And when we look at the split, 81% of current organic purchasers say that, which is up from 79%, and 41% of non-purchasers. So there's definitely a underlying desire for increased trust in a barrier sense, and this process of certification is definitely a trusted and also accepted way to help validate that purchase. So some of the other just key metrics that have come out of that, nearly 80% of current organic purchasers say that having a trust mark on the product, a certification mark, has either a strong or moderate influence on their decision to buy 2 identical products. And that only compares with 35% of non-shoppers at the moment. We see that more and more people are saying they won't buy products that aren't certified. So that's up to 39% of all shoppers. And we're also seeing lower levels of people saying that they would consider buying a non-certified product, although it's still quite a large proportion at around 32%. So one of the key mechanisms the industry's got at its disposal in terms of building that trust with consumers is to make sure their products are certified, because more and more people are starting to look for it and more people are starting to understand what it means. We've also tracked a range of the different certification marks over a number of years. So this is prompted certification. So we show them the range of major Australian as well as major overseas cert marks and ask whether they've previously seen them. And you can see there that the bud has basically tripled in its recognition since 2009. Which by far and away exceeds all other both Australian and global cert marks. The really interesting thing is the strong correlation between the number of products in the market that are certified. So people are seeing that on shelf more and more, and also the work, I guess, done by AO are some of the drivers around that. That's not to say they don't recognise other marks; they certainly do, but at much lower levels. The principle, I guess, that underpins all this is the fact that we have the ability as an industry to control our own destiny, and one of the key sureties to be able to drive further uptake is get this trust moving. So whether it's the AO mark or others, certification is becoming an increasingly important weapon in providing a baseline level of comfort for consumers in the market. So that's really the Mobium piece. It's worth reflecting on, at a highlight sense, it's worth reflecting, I guess, on a couple of things. We've seen COVID change society, but it hasn't derailed the appetite for Australians when it comes to the organic industry. It's changed the way they shop, but it continues to be a vibrant and strong point of difference, I guess, that people are looking for when they're making their food and non-food increasingly choices. So the underlying aspiration about organic to provide a healthier, more sustainable product choice is real, and it's a convergence of a whole range of other societal factors that are going on. Organics is not alone in tapping into the health and wellness and sustainability trends that are going on. You might note, depending on where you live, that both Coles and Woolworths are on TV at the moment, talking about sustainability, talking about green, talking about the initiatives they're taking within their stores and within their products. And this just is one example, I guess, of a societal shift that we're seeing across other industries as well. Worth touching on very quickly the work that Nielsen did. So this is specifically related to grocery industry. The home scan tool which was used here is a 10,000 strong household panel where people are scanning and their purchases, and Nielsen's aggregating that so they can see their actual shopping behaviour. So in a nutshell, and there's more detail in the report, you're seeing household penetration increasing. And as a set of key metrics, that's something that we're interested in. In particular, we're seeing the household annual spend on organics increase, and we've got a double-digit increase over the 2019 to 2021, and that's being driven primarily by increasing number of trips. So the average household trip is up to buy organics is up from 12.5 occasions to 14, so 12.4% increase. And however, the spend per occasion is relatively flat at $7.50. So in terms of KPIs and key metrics, we're continuing to see growth. We're continuing to see increased interest in the organic market from shoppers, which is reflected in increasing sales rates. The really interesting thing in the Nielsen data, if you do wade into the detail, is the fact that the bulk of this is being driven by certified organic products. So they represent about 71% of all organic sales. In terms of categories, dry grocery is the largest at about 24%, dairy 21%, breakfast goods about 14%, and then fresh at about 12%, but growing really, really fast. The other thing that the Nielsen data shows, which correlates with the Mobium and other data, is that supermarkets in grocery are accounting for around 90% of sales at this point, and the three majors are up at around 7 or over 3/4 of that. So there's definitely some good news stories in this, and from a forward-looking point of view, certainly based on the underlying consumer data as well as what's actually happening in stores, and that applies both from a sales perspective but also from a ranging perspective. How much shelf space is being allocated to organics in supermarkets, as an example, what's going on online, but also the vibrancy and the other offers in the independent trade, all bodes well for the future. And whilst supermarkets are continuing to grab lion's share, I think that is actually a very good sign for independent trade down the track, because no matter how well supermarkets go, they're never going to have the ability to have a range offer as significant as a good independent specialty store. So what we saw in previous research was that people might start their organic journey within a supermarket, but as they move through into the committed and the dabblers and they're looking for bigger ranges, in fact, they start to diversify their shopping behaviour, looking for channels and stores and brands that aren't available in supermarkets, because they are trying to embrace this more fully in the rest of their lives. So to sum all that up, I'd say what we've seen in 2021 is the continuation of a long-term systemic shift in understanding of consumers at a macro level towards healthier, more sustainable options, and specifically as it applies to this industry, an increasing understanding and desire to consider organic. They want products that are authentic and that represent their values, and more Australians are caring about their own health and well-being. They are concerned about the communities that they live in and the broader context of the environment as well. Providing information is a really important thing for activating the next phase of growth in the organic industry. We need to think about how we communicate clearly, ethically, straight up and down, not tell people what to do, but give them the information to make their own choice. I think people are looking for authentic, credible options. They are open to new brands, but they need to be really sure that they're making a good choice. They are paying a price premium by and large. And so there is some risk in this. So the more the brands, retailers and industry can do to provide a level playing field where information is as credible and as straight up and down around a set of standards will be super important. And certification marks, I think, are going to become one of those prime vehicles to determine that trust. I think from a retail point of view, we are already starting to see it where organics are becoming, in particular in supermarkets, becoming dual range. So there might be a specific section, as Coles and Woolies do, but there also will be organic products popping up within mainstream sections. So whether it's in tomato ketchup, where Heinz might have an offer sitting alongside its normal or the normal section of sauces, etc. So those dual locations are going to start to become more prevalent. I think from an independent retail point of view, there's heaps of opportunity to range alternatives to what might be found in supermarkets, potentially to try and differentiate your offer, but to also compete on advice, on information, and on providing a really broad range of products. So that's probably it from me. Might throw back to Niki, and happy to take any questions, comments, and if we can't answer, we'll take it on notice and see if we can come up with something for you. Thanks for listening, and I hope that was useful. Niki.
Thanks, Nick. Very useful and great to be able to dive into that chapter more and talk about what's happening in organic. There is a question that's come through while you were speaking from one of the people sitting on the webinar. Is there any info on changes in outlet purchase behaviour in wine retail?
No, not specifically in wine. I would say, just observationally, the big liquor retailers in the country are starting to range up their organic offers. So I would imagine, similar to in grocery, we may be seeing some shifts there, and certainly online as well. And I guess the same COVID issues might have applied where the cellar doors and others would have been constrained in the COVID situation, but there was no data specifically collected around alcohol purchase behaviour.
I know, thanks, Nick. I know from our discussions from a business perspective with some of the wine industry, the dual ranging is certainly an interesting proposition by certified operators. Some are certainly preferring to not be in the organic section. They'd rather be in the regular section because they see they're more available to consumers. So I think, and in speaking with one of the larger alcohol organisation, it certainly is more of a focus. I know any organic product that's going under the majors is certified as well. So they're carrying through the food processes in regard to certification requirements. But that's certainly something to put on the list for our market report 2023. While that may seem a long way away, it's actually not. It's data collected all throughout 2022. So we're hoping to do further deep dives, Daniel, who sent that through, into different sectors in the next market report. Are there any other questions anyone has? Please put them. Oh yeah, one more has popped in. Lisa has said, thanks, that was a great summary and insight. Did we see a change in click and collect behaviour from supermarkets? And did you get a big uptake in e-commerce from your farms and farm gates? Was there a trend changing for states in lockdowns?
Well, I think certainly the whole online space, and certainly it reflects in the data where people are purchasing, or more purchasing of organics is happening through online and e-tail. Click and collect specifically, I'm not sure, but home deliveries certainly, and it would make sense that click and collect is following on. I'd be interested. I can't speak specifically for what's happening at farm gate, but if anyone who operates a farm gate is online, it'd be great to hear your insights to share that experience.
Okay. A few people popped up. So Daniel's come back to thanks. Would be good to measure specific wine retailers. These groups are a big influence on influencers within that category.
Sure.
Thanks, Daniel. We'll certainly note that. The data that we collect through Mobium is slightly tweaked in relation to questions each year, but the underlying foundation of the survey remains the same, so we can refer to growth, but there's always an option to improve and look into different areas. So we'll keep that in mind for next year's data collection process. There is, I'm not sure who it is, it's an anonymous person who sent through, do customers look for certified organic in beauty or essential oils?
I think any product that is claiming to be organic, I think as you can see, there's a large portion of consumers now who one of their default checks about that product is to look for certification. And certainly as we move into non-food categories, that certainly is the case, that many people will. So I think the answer to the question, whilst I don't have specific data on that particular segment, would be that there would be a large proportion of consumers who would be interested and certainly looking to get some validation by having certification.
I think anecdotally, looking at the brands that are claiming organic in the marketplace at the moment, are certainly the major ones in the space, and probably teeter on the edges. Most of them are becoming certified. I can think of at least 2 major brands that weren't certified sort of 3 or 4 years ago that have become certified. And while their whole offering may not be certified, certainly the majority of it is. So they're seeing that point of difference opportunity and therefore certifying what they can. Beauty is a complex space when it comes to organic. And globally, there are sort of consistent standards. Australia has a couple of different versions of them here, which mirrors our complex regulatory framework. We're trying to help change at the moment in other ways. But yeah, look, I think if you look at bigger brands, they're getting, I think, more smart about their messaging, especially when it comes from being exactly what it says it is on the packaging. Although I'm not suggesting all are. I certainly found a few a couple of weeks ago when I was at the shop doing a bit of a market research tour that certainly were using the word in the wrong way.
I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is as consumers are pressing this way, the retailers are also picking up on that trend. So you might look at the offers of many of the bigger supermarkets, and you'll find that by and large, the vast majority of products that are branded as organic are certified now. So certainly the overseas experience, as it might reflect here, is that more and more retailers are looking for certification as part of their new line ranging process. So, some basic questions around, product. One of them is this product certified? If yes, by who? So over time, potentially there will be some choice editing happening by retailers where they say, you know what, we understand that consumers are very interested in making sure that they're making a sound purchase here. One of the key mechanisms we can do is to stock certified products. So, and you see their private label ranges, 100% certified organic. So that could be another, I guess, consideration over time. Is whilst some aren't at the moment, there may be distribution pressure to move down that path.
Thanks, Nick. Del Alice has sent a message on the chat as well, which I think I've got an answer for, but happy for Nick also to be involved. How best can one make customers feel confident when purchasing organic fruit and veg when not every item isn't labelled with a logo? Obviously, a problem that's evident, and a lot of areas where it can be misleading when you can't provide the evidence. One of the recommendations that I would suggest, and I don't know your business setup, but maybe an easy way long term is to actually provide the producer who has sold you those products on a little header card in relation to wherever that is, would then give the level of, I guess, confidence to the consumer around that. I know there's a number of retailers in and around the Queensland Southeast region that they just have a blanket rule that everything in their business is certified organic, just so that there is no queries, or because they did have both, claiming organic versus being certified. So I think it's just as long as you're actually conveying a consistent message, or at least providing proof of essentially where that product comes from by a simple header card, could be an alternative. So there's a couple of options there. Nick, did you have anything to add?
Look, I think that's right, Nikki. I think being able to tell the story of the product, where it's come from, who the farmer was, and their certification status, is a really nice way to be able to merchandise product. And people are interested in the stories of where their food came from. So just like this slide that we're looking at, trying to humanize that experience is a good way to do it. And to Nikki's point, if it doesn't have to be complex, but if you've got it at the point of sale, it just, if we know these apples have come from a certain place or farm, and that it is certified, then it all adds to the communication and the buy-in.
Just a follow up from Lisa, and this was in relation to the retail. She mentioned that she was grateful when Peninsula Fresh Organics, who I know they're a fantastic producer down in the Mornington Peninsula, have retail and pivoted very quickly, and would like to see if that trend was across the regions. Look, I think, Lisa, where people they could last year, I certainly know a lot of stories of where people just kind of really had to, otherwise they were going to create their own challenges. And I've seen that store online, and it's beautiful, and the Shields do a beautiful job of merchandising their produce in that particular store. There's another question here from Yi. Will customers be interested in Taiwan organic food category, dried organic processed food category to be specific? Well, I think the relationship we have with Taiwan certainly has the strength of trade relationships, so I can't see why they wouldn't. But what I would suggest is probably doing market research if you are looking at trading that product into the market before you did start doing that. So happy to catch up offline if there's further discussion to put you in contact with the right people. But ultimately that would be I think a more of a very specific question that we'd have to take offline. I don't think that there's any other questions. We've answered all of those. No one's sending any more through. No, we've addressed everything that's been sent through. Nick, do you have anything else to add to the discussion today?
Look, I don't think so. I think, I feel like as an industry, what AO does with the market report is a really strong piece of work. We do work with other industry groups. None of them have got the longevity of research nor the breadth. And being able to have University of Melbourne, Euromonitor, Nielsen, some of the biggest and most credentialed brands in Australia and globally in this space is really good. So I think the information that's in the market report is really solid. And, I think the opportunity, as you mentioned, Niki, to be able to tweak a few questions here and there to look at specific segments whilst continuing that baseline is a real credit to the industry. So really privileged and happy to be involved, and I hope everyone got something out of today. And I'm sure if you've got other questions, Niki will be able to, collate them, and we can do our best to answer you. But in the end, I think the key message is authentic, certified, and communication are the three things I'd say.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That's a great wrap up, and it's always a pleasure working with Mobium Group, especially with the richness of detail we have over a decade in relation to organic consumer behaviour. Well, that's the end of today. Thank you all for dialing in. We had a very good turnout, and really appreciate you all spending some time with us this afternoon. Be safe, and we will chat to you again at some stage with some new insights.
Thank you.